Thank you very much, Elizabeth, and thank you everybody for joining. It is my pleasure to speak to you today about Certara Integral, our new product that will be released at the end of July, our next generation data repository for clinical pharmacology and pharmacometrics. So the situation that we found ourselves in as Certara, a global leader in PK/PD modeling and simulation, is that we've actually been doing and been a leader in this space for almost 30 years now. For about 20 of those years, we've had a 21 CFR Part 11 compliant data repository product, and we've actually been hosting that as a software as a service for something like 10 or 12 years now. So we have a lot of experience in this space within clinical pharmacology, pharmacometrics, and hosting data in a Part 11 compliant way. But, given the changes within the industry, technology, and data science, we asked ourselves, what would a next generation data repository look like? And we started to gather these requirements, and the outcome has really been the design for what has become Certara Integral. So we basically organized the requirements into 6 feature categories. The first is, how will we organize the data? Second, how will these data be accessible? Third, finding and the ability to find and visualize those data once they've been stored in the repository. Again, to maintain 21 CFR Part 11 compliance of those data, as we're working in a very much regulated space. The fifth is the ability to track those data for traceability and reproducibility, even beyond what Part 11 is requiring us to do. And finally, the performance and usability of the solution. So let's begin with the way that the data are organized. So what we found is that we would have to provide a basic standardized root folder structure. There's, a need and desire, I think, within many companies to organize data in their own way, but rather than making it, completely open, we decided we would provide a stable backbone, and then below that backbone, or even beside the backbone, allow for customizable folder structure so that it could mimic the way that companies are used to storing data. So the base elements of the data organization we've organized into, first being the study. So all data in a clinical pharmacology scenario are ultimately going to be collected within the context of a study. So study is really the base unit, and it's studies that people submit to regulators as part of the drug approval process. That being said, though, we know that when people are working, they're not always working on a study per se. They're sometimes working on a project. So they're working on some kind of question that they're trying to answer that actually spans beyond the question of, or the hypothesis of, one study. So they may be doing translational medicine and want to do allometric scaling, or something where you're using data from across studies to answer additional questions. So we allow for this kind of concept within a project. Within both the study and the project, we introduce the concept of an experiment. And the experiment, which I'll talk about in greater detail as we go through the presentation, is really the base unit, the base analytical unit. So this is where we're doing an analysis. We're using data, we're using models, different collateral in order to perform an analysis. This is what we call an experiment, and we treat this in a very specific way. And, it's this organization that was necessary in order to do some of the more sophisticated data tracking that we'll describe later as we move through the presentation. And then, of course, it's important to have data folders where we're storing data, and we know that those are repositories for data, as well as libraries. And these would typically be used for models that we want to be able to reuse for multiple projects. And so, like I said, we allow this customization below these or beside these root level folders, and we allow for users to specify free-form metadata as well as predetermined metadata, and also add comments to any folders